Hi everybody, I'm Jasmine Navarro, certified family coach, and I work with teenagers and families in educational institutions and for individuals as well. Sorry, that wasn't a very good introduction, but there you go. Every week I give lives and I interview different experts who make a difference in people's lives. And today I'm super excited to be interviewing Paul Firth, who is the founder and managing director of ICAS. Paul, please tell us about yourself and what you do.
Hi, Jasmine. Hi to everybody who's listening. Hopefully there are people listening and lots of you. And thanks for inviting me on to have a brief talk around my sort of focus and area of expertise, which is mental health in the workplace. I'm managing director of ICAS MENA. So ICAS is a global provider of employee assistance programs. So we're a sort of specialist in the field of delivering mental health support services into the workplace.
Yeah.
And I came here 12 years ago to set up what is now ICAS MENA, and we're supporting now over 300 corporate clients with a whole range of support services, professional support services. So that's us. That's what we do, and obviously, more than happy to have this conversation around mental health in the workplace.
Brilliant. And what made, and I mean, it's such an important topic, but what made you decide to choose this topic today?
Well, apart from it being our area of expertise, I think we're talking these days about mental health more than we ever used to do, and so it is a topic we can, even in this region now, openly talk about, and it's acknowledged that it is a problem. And I think in terms of tackling the challenge of people's mental well-being, is to simply just look and say, well, look, we spend a significant proportion of our life at work. So clearly that is a good focus for us to see how we can help and support people in changing their lives, empowering them to live their lives better. And as employers, we have a great opportunity to do that and to drive change, to for most companies, a large population of people in one go that we can reach out to. And from an employee's perspective, clearly, there are significant financial benefits for putting the focus into employee well-being, albeit that's a phrase that's widely used and probably means different things to different people.
Exactly.
But,
No, thanks, Paul. That's what I was going to ask you. And it probably seems a very simple question, but like, what actually is mental health in the workplace? Like, are you talking about, somebody's happiness in the workplace? Are you talking about if they're severely depressed? Like, I know it's such a huge question, but to simplify it, what is mental health in the workplace?
Mental well-being or an individual's well-being. So I encompass mental health in the overall overarching word of well-being. So mental health overlaps with many areas of our life, and that's why as an employer, when we're talking about mental health in the workplace, we really have to take a holistic view of what we mean by an individual's well-being. So we generally work on 7 pillars of well-being. That's an individual's emotional, psychological well-being, their occupational, their spiritual, their financial, I'm now trying to think of the other 7.
I know,
their social well-being, all elements that as an individual we're dealing with in our lives. Most of that, yes, from an employer's perspective, may look at that and think, well, probably 6 out of those 7 pillars, the one that's not occupational, are things to do outside of work. So why should I want to focus on those as an employer? Well, the reality is they come into the workplace. The fact that I, as an individual, are in the workplace in whatever format that might be today, which is a changing scenery in terms of, today we've got a very sort of fluid work environment. with remote workers, we've got people who are working flexi hours, we've got people that are still working full time and in the office, and then we've got people who are a combination maybe of 2 or 3 of those. But the reality is, however, which in whatever way I'm working as an employee, when I am working, then those challenges that may be outside in my personal life affect me in terms of my ability to be focused. And that's really what we're talking about, being focused and engaged when I'm actually in the workplace. Definitely. So they all have an impact on an individual's ability to be productive and engaged and focused when they're working. So from an employer's perspective, you have to acknowledge that is the situation. Now, as an employer, you don't want to get involved in those outside of work personal issues, but you recognize that they are impacting the individual and therefore impacting you as a business. Then you want to at least extend or make available professional support services to help individuals to manage their life better, I suppose, And so, being able to empower them to make the changes that they most want to, but also that will benefit you as an employer. So, it is very significant factor now that employers have to acknowledge if they're not currently acknowledging that.
No, brilliant. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's just as simple as, we take all of our problems with us. Whatever we're going through, we take it with us, don't we? It's very hard to separate everything, I feel like.
Well, I think there's been lots of research. I mean, one of the biggest stressors in the workplace is financial challenges. Now, that primarily is, financial challenges in an individual's personal life. But 59% of the stressors in the workplace relate to financial challenges. So, that's a significant, significant factor that as an employer, you've then got to understand, well, I have to try and do something about that. I can't interfere with the financial challenges that an employee has, but I've got to try and do something about that. And what we also know that, people who have financial challenges, around 50% will have issues with their mental well-being. So they will suffer in terms of their mental well-being. So, if you have 1,000 employees, 600 of your employees now will be dealing with some financial challenges that they're finding, a problem. And of those, 300. So you have 300 in your workforce of 1,000 that have got a financial challenge they're probably dealing with, and that in itself is leading to, mental health challenges.
It's interesting. When you say financial challenges, do you mean, because the first thing I think of is not having enough finances. Is that what you mean, or is it something else?
It can be that. It can be, through our services, we do deal with a lot of debt situations. But it doesn't have to be at that extreme end of financial challenges. We can be living okay in terms of managing our financial needs, but they can come under pressure. We know here, school fees can go up and salaries stay at the same level. Ultimately, you might be finding the resource to manage that situation, but it will be a stressor that will be affecting you as an individual. So, it can be anything that for you as an individual is adding to that pressure that you're having to manage.
Yeah. And then I guess that could lead to, if somebody doesn't have, they're having financial difficulties, maybe they could end up working more hours, and I don't know, the stress, the pressure, that could lead to burnout as well. Like, do you have a lot of burnout? Like, how do you?
Burnout's a big problem now. It's we're in a working environment now where we're constantly on call as such, aren't we?
Yes.
With the social media is fantastic, and all the tools that we have available to us, WhatsApp and everything, and Twitter and whatever. I'm not a big social media player, but the reality is we're constantly on on demand. Yeah?
Yes.
And that's on demand, not just in our personal social world, but also through work. And unless we're very good at managing that, and when we get that sort of late night email, or we get that WhatsApp that is work related, and we choose to ignore it and leave it to the next day, but it's not easy to do that. And certainly in this region, it historically has been a region where long hours are expected. You're doing your job well if you're working long hours. And again, there's all the data to show that it's not about the number of hours you're working, it's about the quality of the work that you can deliver within the hours that you're working. And if you manage your time and resource effectively, then you can work in what might be deemed as reduced hours.
Because that's what I was going to say.
They moved to 4.5 day week.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Logic would say, well, I'm losing half a day, so that's just not going to work. Well, if we work smarter, then we can. But at the same time, just moving to a 4.5 day week is you have to then look at, does the company culture support that move? Because you're going to have to change. If it is a sort of a on-demand, constantly on-demand culture, then moving to a 4.5 day week probably just means people working longer hours over a shorter working week. That's not going to work. You will have burnout. So it has to be a combination of things that you're doing in terms of working smarter, and in terms of recognizing that constantly on demand is not something that longer term is beneficial to the individual or to companies or to the business.
So no, definitely. Thanks, Paul. We've got lots of people. Let me just say hi to everybody. We will answer your questions soon, but thank you so much and keep them coming. But no, I was just going to say, when you were saying that, so what do you think is needed then? Is it the communication? Is it training for this time management? Because it seems like a lot of it's to do with time management. Is it time management?
Yes and yes. It's that communication. We have to change some of our approach to management styles that historically we may have, I might say, got away with in this region. We have to have managers that have more empathy, that have more EQ in terms of emotional intelligence to get effectively to work with their teams, their employee populations, and ultimately from a business perspective get more out of them. I mean, it's not just about looking after employees and all the soft, nicey, let's look after the well-being of our employees for their benefit. Yes, there is an element of that as well, but it's a fundamental business need. And one of the challenges here as a manager is working across a very sort of multicultural population in terms of your teams. That in itself brings many challenges, because you're not only working across different cultures, nuances, sensitivities, even the languages. We all speak English, but for a lot of people, English is not their native tongue, and so the communications that we have are very vital then in terms of how we communicate with people. And we talk about managers listening. Listening is one thing, but really taking on board what you're hearing, and as I say, then having the empathy and the EQ then to really understand what is required then for you to help that individual, and ultimately then help the business.
That's good, actually. When you mentioned empathy, I was thinking of empathy, and I was thinking, just out of curiosity, do you think you can teach empathy? Like, can you teach empathy? Like,
I don't see why not.
Really?
There are some people that I suppose are born with more empathy than others. But if you're understanding, if you're willing to change, you have to be willing to change. You have to be willing to learn new skills, and that's really what empathy is about: is learning some of the new skills that are vital in terms of managing today. And if we feel that we well, I'm too old for, changing my style. I'm too old for empathy is a thing that you're born with. Well, there's an element of that, but you can certainly, educate yourself to grow that within yourself, which will then come across in how you engage with others. So without doubt, you can develop that skill.
Yes. So having a growth mindset, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah.
I just say hi to a few people. Hi, David. How are you doing? And we've got David, another David from Texas. Hello.
Texas. Goodness me.
Yes. Yeah. And is it Ferdus? Hi, Ferdus. Is there any alarming research on mental health in today's workplace? You did mention something, Paul, but is there anything else that comes to mind?
Alarming research. Well, ignoring any form of acceptance that mental health is in the workplace and is a challenge is probably the alarming element of it. In terms of research, I mean, we are seeing, there is evidence to show that there's a significant increase post-COVID of burnout. Yeah, I think if you recognise what happened, big part of what happened through COVID was, we were all experiencing something we never ever imagined we would experience.
Yeah.
So it was new for everybody, and I think we were going in sort of flight, fight or flight mode. We're in a fight mode that we have to get through whatever this period is. And the reality is you can only carry that on for so long before your body will start to react and respond to that.
Wow.
And I think post-COVID, yes, we don't have those same challenges, but I think the ways that we've changed the way that we work, I think have brought some new challenges. It brings flexibility. Remote working is great. I'm sat now at home doing this, and I've been at home working today. Great flexibility, but in itself, it brings other challenges that we perhaps haven't had to experience or deal with before. And I think remote working, again, what we're seeing for a lot of remote work is the feeling of isolation. You're missing probably what you experienced before was the sort of social interactions that you had that you didn't really think about in the workplace. That you would have, at the coffee corner or whatever however you socialized at work, you lose that. And that's, I often think of that in the context of, a new joiner somewhere. If you're starting new as a company and you were then starting in a remote working sort of scenario, how do you build your workplace relationships?
Yeah.
You can build them, you're building them, but you're building them in a completely different way that you used to before. You're building them like this. And this is not the way that we've normally established our relationships with people. It's been face-to-face, interactions.
Yeah.
So we have to change how we go about doing that. So, and I think these are the things that are now just heightening some of the challenges on our mental well-being.
Definitely.
In terms of our ability to. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Paul. No, but just when you were saying that, I was thinking as well, this working from home and being isolated, I think actually working from home could lead to burnout faster, because I don't know what you think about that, because I feel like when you're working outside, you do have these interactions with people. So you have a little bit of a break, a breather from work, maybe in the break. But at home,
you have natural breaks that you don't even think about. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Aside from your 1 hour lunch, if you get a 1 hour lunch, and you go to the coffee, you will have on a fairly regular basis in most office environments, you'll have some form of natural breaks.
Yeah.
You don't, unless you are really focused on ensuring you do when you work remotely, you tend to not do those. You don't experience those. I know, I've worked for many years remotely, so COVID wasn't a new experience for me in my past working experiences.
Yeah.
But I do know from those experiences that you have to be very focused on managing yourself. You're not going to get disrupted by others coming up to your desk and asking you things. You're not going to have those natural breaks in what you're doing. It's very easy to be doing your work, and the next thing you realize you not only missed lunch, it went a couple of hours ago, and things like that. It's work's always, I've always said, if you're working in an office environment, even if you're working long hours, when you physically walk out of that door, you are leaving it behind you to some degree. I know I've mentioned earlier about social media and connectivity, but to some degree you are leaving that until you go back in the next day. If you're working from home or remotely, it is always there. So you've got to be very, very focused in managing your time and saying, that's it, enough's enough. I need to stop. And the boundaries.
The healthy boundaries, which I think become blurry at home.
Yeah. But the challenge to that then is, and this is back to upskilling the managers, if you're managing a team that is predominantly remote working, you've got to have a tremendous amount of trust. That's not always evident from what you see in a lot of managers that I come across over my time here. You have to have a very strong trust within the team for you to manage remotely, and I think that brings about some of the challenges for managers in, well, how do I manage somebody who is at the other end of a screen, so far away potentially, and how do I get to develop my skills to engage with them? I'm going to have to engage with you over a web discussion quite differently to the person that's sat maybe opposite me at another desk. So it needs a different skill set or addition to the skills I may already have.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And just following on, so from Elizabeth, hi Elizabeth, she says, I guess when we talked about that earlier, environmental and financial, the 7 pillars. Hi Chris. So Chris says, I wish I could listen to all of this, but have a Zoom. Paul is such a positive influence of what we do, and his 7 pillars example has given me something I can use and discuss at a presentation. Looking forward to seeing full interview. Well done, Jasmine, and the guru for Mr. Firth. Thank you so much.
Very kind, Chris.
Is it Phoebe?
Hi, Phoebe. Yes. Hi, Phoebe.
Hi, Phoebe. Interesting thoughts, Paul. And David says, hi, Paul. I'm a dedicated sober and recovery coach living in the UAE. Can I ask what ICAS MENA include in their programs to accommodate addiction and recovery? Thank you, David.
Okay.
David. Yes.
Thanks, David. What do we have in our programs? Well, our programs.
EAP one, if you like, first, and then.
EAP programs. Well, that EAPs. If you look back to the history of EAPs, many years ago, 50, 60 years ago, they originated from the old alcohol AA programs around substance and alcohol abuse addiction.
Oh, wow.
So that's where they originally established and came from. And over the many years, they've then grown into supporting right across the sort of varying fields of mental well-being. So what do we have in our programs to accommodate? Well, EAPs really are about short-term focused interventions. So they can certainly start the process of helping an individual down the line of managing and recognizing the need to manage their addiction through to recovery. Probably in terms of what you're doing, David, needs probably a more longer term support. And unfortunately, in this region, that is still somewhat lacking in terms of access to longer term support services. But addiction, supporting individuals with addictions is something that we do through our programs, whether that's telephonically or face-to-face counselling, whether it's through also through the wellness coaching as well, in terms of helping individuals changing their lifestyle in terms of their diet and nutrition, because it all interlinks with everything.
Definitely.
So that's the idea of the EAP programs, is to try and have a more holistic approach to helping individuals. But I wish there was more sort of easy to access state-funded support services here. I mean, we've recently had the launch of the counselling mental health support line that the UAE now has, which is a great start to see something like that being implemented. I would like to see it a 24/7 helpline and not sort of restricted by sort of work type hours, because people requiring support, certainly mental health perspective, it's not something that you sort of seek out within given timelines. You do it when you need to. Exactly. And that's why it needs to be 24/7. Hopefully that will happen with these support lines, as our service is 24/7. It has to be.
Yeah. No, brilliant. Thanks, Paul. And actually, I was going to ask the EAP program. So, how does it work then for people because some people might not even know it exists in their company. They might not even know they have access to this, because I don't know, how does it work?
Well, the programs are effectively that they're funded by the employer,
right?
And so the employer pays us, and then we make available the range of services that the employee's chosen in terms of we make those accessible to the employees. So from an employee's perspective and their family members, then they have unlimited access to those services, which would be telephonic counselling, face-to-face counselling, legal, financial guidance, wellness coaching. So yes, you can engage with lawyers, financial advisors through the program. You can engage with under the wellness coaching, nutritionist, exercise coach, life coach. So that's the whole idea.
Yes.
So from an employee's perspective, you fund that. Your employees now can freely use and engage with all those services as and when they need to, based on their own individual choice and need.
Brilliant.
So that's how it works.
Yes.
So I suppose the downside of that still is that still leaves a significant percentage of the population that still don't have access to these types of services, because we still don't currently provide access to, from an individual's perspective. There's still a company-funded workplace initiative, but we're always looking at ways that we can potentially do that. That's why, and Chris just on, that's why we do fully support things like Mindforce. So it's we
should it be a privilege?
Support those things.
Yeah, it should be accessible to everybody. And Ferda says, is mental health a must CSR, or it boils down to self-awareness? What does
CSR, corporate social responsibility? I'm suspecting that is without doubt. Furthest, without doubt. This is why I say it's critical. It's not just an employee benefit as such. It's employee business need. Corporate social responsibility. I'd also say, from an employer's perspective, probably more down the duty of care and getting into risk and liability and health and safety, into that field, because really a big part of what we're about as an organisation in terms of delivering mental health services into the workplace is about managing this behavioural risk management. So certainly a lot of the companies we work with, certainly maybe in the aviation industry or oil and gas, that are safety sensitive work environments. Then clearly, you have to be putting things in place that appropriately identify and manage risk within the workplace, specifically if that individual themselves is working within a safety sensitive role. Then managing the risk and their mental health state from their perspective is one thing, but it's also recognizing and managing that risk in relation to the workplace. So risk and liability is a big thing that I talk about.
Yeah.
So delivering mental health services into the workplace is not just about delivering counselling. You have to look beyond that. So it's just like, occupational health, which is still not something you see readily here in this region, but occupational health is really taking the same approach in the medical field, which is saying, a doctor will treat an individual's medical condition and try and relieve and remove that condition. An occupational health specialist will be looking at that and saying, we will treat, but we need to look at what is the cause, what is the potential cause of that condition, and is that cause potentially something within the workplace? And if it is, we have to then look at what we need to do to make changes within the role that individual has in the workplace to avoid that condition becoming about again. And if we allow that individual to go back into the workplace without that change, then all that's going to happen is we're going to repeat the situation, and we are potentially, as an employer, we're setting up ourselves for potential liability, employer liability risk. And it's the same with mental health. Yeah. What you don't want to be doing is, as an employer, is having somebody treated and supported for mental health interventions. Whoever your provider is, irrespective of whether it's us or a local psychology clinic or some of the mental health apps that are out there now. What, as an employer, you have to be very careful of is if through that support service there is an identified risk to the individual, that's not the only risk we need to be assessing. We need to be assessing, is that going to provide a risk within the work context? And if it is, what are we doing now to manage that? And so, that's why, EAP providers like ourselves, we're not the only one. That is our area of speciality, and it's about managing behavioural risk. And, especially when you're in safety sensitive work environments. So like I say, aviation, oil and gas, and there are many other industries.
And when you say that, so you mean like you send people in to deliver training on this, so they know the signs and the
there'll be training, but we do training we do training for either managers or employees in general, in terms of upskilling them in terms of their ability to recognize some of the signs. So that can be a way to at least get people into professional support as soon as possible if they need it, rather than it sort of festering within the individual themselves and then within the workplace, and then becomes more of a greater problem. So as always, early intervention is better. If a good line manager should be able to identify some of the triggers, and so if we can educate them what these triggers might look like, then as a good line manager, I can be picking these up early and hopefully persuading people, to seek some, professional support through the services that are then made available. But in terms of what I'm then really talking about in terms of risk and liability is, if I'm going for counselling and I don't know, let's say I'm identified with anxiety, and find I might be having now counselling to help me manage that anxiety. Depending on what my role is at work, that anxiety could potentially put me at risk, but also the employer in terms of risk of an incident or an accident caused by me having anxiety, if my role would be affected by that. So we, whilst at supporting that individual, we have to be looking at the broader picture and the context of that individual and the work that they do in the workplace. Because it may be we have to make some amendments, obviously working with the employer, make some amendments to ensure that risk is managed appropriately.
And I guess it's about support, having the right support. I mean,
it's having the right support. It's within the business, then having the willingness to recognise that if you don't provide the support, and that support can be not just supporting the individual, but maybe changing, when I do come back into the workplace, maybe changing some of the working practices that helps me then sort of come back into the work environment without that risk element. If that could be there if we don't change some of those sort of working practices.
And I think, no, definitely. And I think, like, no, what you've said, I think it's all extremely, completely agree with everything. But what about, like, because, you know, we're always taught, like, look out for the signs of other people and all of this, you know, but sometimes I think we have to focus on ourselves as well, don't we? Like, we're responsible for ourselves, because it can be hard to see the signs if somebody's not quite right. Like, a lot of people, you know, really can hide their feelings.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer in you have to look after yourself first to some degree. Prime example of that to me is, you know, if what do they tell you when you're when you're flying on a plane?
Put your mask on first.
When those masks comes down, put yours on first before you seek to help anybody else.
Exactly.
If you don't, you're potentially not going to be able to help the person next to you. Well, it's the same. It's the same with many things. And mental health is one of those. You have to look after yourself first, and if you do, then you're in a better position to help others and recognise maybe some of the signs in others. So absolutely, you know, take care of ourselves.
Yes. Hi, Amir, HSC officer. Hello.
Health and safety officer, from Pakistan. Yeah.
These acronyms, I need to get with the acronyms. It's something we can discuss on whether climate changes. We're not talking about that today, but maybe next time.
Yeah, that's not my area of skill, I have to say.
No, me neither. And Ivana. Oh, Ivana, I was talking about you earlier from ICAS in Qatar. Great added value. I perceived as one of the outcomes of EAP is also community awareness and support in dealing with stigma in the region as clients explore options services at MH. Curious how this resonates with your impressions, Paul.
Absolutely. Community for me is the community we live in, but also I'm a firm believer that you establish a community within the workplace. Whether that's within your teams or whether it's, you know, good companies that have the right well-being culture, have the right culture that drives down through the organization. That culture itself builds a community and builds a more positive community. And it's the community togetherness that will drive the significant change. If we try and do it as individuals, not saying it can't be achieved, but it's so much harder work to achieve the end goal. Whether you're working in teams or communities, then, you know, that's again back to what I'm saying in terms of why should we focus in the workplace? Well, the workplace is the one place where everybody comes together for a significant part of the day, you know, 5, 6, maybe 7 days a week in some instances still here, but 5, 6 days a week, you know. So what a great opportunity to have people together as a community where you can really drive that change.
Exactly. We're not supposed to be on our own, are we? Mental health is very important in the workplace. It's the need of the day. Yes,
absolutely.
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 Hi, Deb. And I think the world we live in now, loneliness is a big issue for people. So an effective EAP provider is really important. I completely agree. Yeah, loneliness, I think, is a killer, quite honestly.
It is, and it's something we shouldn't sort of just throw away as a passing comment. You know, it's a significant factor, and we need to recognise that.
We're not supposed to be on our own, are we? We're not, like you said, being isolated. I mean, that has caused so many problems. I mean, during COVID or before COVID, after COVID, we need to be with people, don't we? And I think it's funny that loneliness, I think people seem to be ashamed to say they're lonely as well. So they probably feel even more lonely because they can't actually express that they're lonely.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with wanting and finding your own space.
Yeah.
So there are times I love being, you know, times where I have my own space and it's just me, and I put my headphones on, listen to my music. Nobody else is about. Fantastic.
Yeah.
But loneliness is a different thing where, it's really not an option for you. And we are human beings. And, I think, what did we all experience through COVID? The family networks ended up, so strong because we were all together. I was locked up. We were all locked up in our houses with our families. It brought some other challenges for many families in terms of they weren't used to that, and how did they manage the sort of different pressures on relationships by doing that. But we're human beings, and I'm a firm believer that face-to-face interaction. My team, we work remotely, but every Tuesday we're in the office every Tuesday, and we have our team meeting and we have it together face to face.
Brilliant.
Because I don't want to lose that, and for me, that's a big part of building the right culture within the organization. But we have to learn to live with change. Remote working is going to be a norm now. We have to accept that. So we have to look at ways of how we, how do we, with the remote workers, with the flexi workers, how do we help them to feel motivated as part of the company, to feel, part of the social interactions that happen within the workplace, that if you're remote, you don't really experience that. We've got to find new ways that we can give that same feeling that you are part of that same group.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thanks, Paul. And Ferda says, is there any technology used for constantly measuring the mental health of an employee?
There are lots of apps out there. The only thing I would say is, if you are looking at a lot of these mental health applications, AI is technology that is coming into play now. And it does have value in the mental health field, where you can, but we have to be very careful that the apps and the AI that we're using is at least clinically proven, that it does have some clinical evidence behind it. But there are AI technologies, there are things today that are very useful tools for us to utilize each and every day, that will add benefit to us. But we can't see those in isolation, that they're useful tools to contribute to what we're ultimately trying to achieve. But again, it's back to this rounded, holistic approach. We can't see one thing as the ultimate solution. EAPs themselves are not the only solution. They have to be part of a coordinated approach to managing the overall well-being of individuals.
And I think, totally agree. And I think for me, like if I'm having a down day or something, I just want to get away from all apps and I just want to be out in nature or just out for a walk, So, but I know the apps are the thing now, and, we are on social media a lot, but for me, it's like, go for a walk, do exercise, go back to like the simple things. That's just my opinion.
I have to accept that I'm in a different age category. So I've never been big into social media, so it's quite easy for me to switch off at the end, what I deem to be the end of the working day. I don't look at my WhatsApps. I'm not on Twitter or on all the other social media. I use WhatsApp because it's for me, it's easy to use. And two, it is one of the tools that we use through work as well. But to be constantly checking, to be constantly, I know, as I say, I know I come at it probably from another perspective. My son, he's 22. I mean, he's probably on all these sort of social media platforms, and he sees the sort of regular every second communication as him being in communication with his friends and what's happening, which is fine, and I do get that, but we have to be able to find somewhere to recharge and switch off.
definitely.
You know, we're absolutely adamant when we go to bed that we plug our mobile phone in to ensure that it's fully charged the next day. Yeah. Well, we need to have that same focus on ourselves.
Yes,
yeah?
Definitely.
How can I wake up in the morning fully charged?
Oh, I love that.
And you know, we can get into the importance of sleep. But you know, we don't think twice about doing that with our phone.
You're right.
And if we've forgotten to do it and we wake up the next day and our phone's got 10% charge left, we panic, don't we? We absolutely panic. I can't survive. I can't live. You know, how am I going to get through the day? No. Where's my charger? And yet we don't think the same in terms of recharging ourselves.
No, but that question you just said, what was that? How can I make sure I wake up fully charged? I'm writing that down somewhere because I love it.
Well, there you go.
And there's one more comment before we go. Oh, two more comments. Sorry. Deb says, so true. In a world where we are so connected, we actually become very disconnected. It's sad. It makes me
I totally agree with that. Totally agree. Yeah. It's without doubt, I think we disconnect in other ways.
I know.
Yeah. So it's an unusual thing to actually say, well, I'm totally connected, but actually I feel disconnected. And I think it's back to the human interactions.
Exactly. Back to the simple thing.
Constantly connected on social media is not the same thing.
No, exactly.
You know,
the whole sense of, it's an illusion, isn't it? And that's probably why we end up feeling lonely, and then we probably think we're supposed to feel connected. And then it's really important to be able to switch off and be away from social media. It's definitely another tool.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah.
It's a great thing. Don't get me wrong. It's a great thing, but we have to learn to manage it.
Boundaries.
Yeah. Boundaries and managing it.
Boundaries management. But thank you so much, Paul, for your insights. We could talk all evening, I'm sure. There's so many more things I want to ask you, but maybe we can do another live next time. But thank you so much. How can people reach out to you? Like, could you tell us how they can find you?
Contact ICAS MENA at icasworld.com. That's how you can reach out. Contact ICAS MENA at icasworld.com.
And if you want to write that in the comments, you can on the.
I'll write it in the comments and then
I don't think you can write it here. I think
can I not? Okay.
No, sorry.
I'll write it. Okay.
It won't let you. Yeah, it won't let you. But thank you so much, everyone, for your questions. Please reach out to Paul and myself if you want to discuss this further, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. And I'll see you next week.
Thanks Jasmine. Thanks, everybody.